Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I'll now give the floor to Eduardo Cajane, who will have 15 minutes to give us a summary of sorts. You'll forgive me, but I'll try to fit my square into this round peg hole. I have a prepared presentation. I can't attempt really to give a summary of such a rich and broad debate. In an effort to project ourselves towards a future that for many of us is still an unknown, but which we fear and we feel threatens us, but somehow we still have to face, we should consider wonderful the chance to give us this opportunity to discuss it, to debate it. But if we think that in 3 hours we're going to resolve something, I think we're really tricking ourselves. We must be mindful that a shared effort has to be undertaken by the association. We have to study certain aspects, look for ways forward, and address the issues that have been raised here. I can't hope to touch on all of them, but maybe to give you a sense of where we're headed. When Angela Kyle says that we cannot, or she rhetorically asks, could we not think of ourselves as to be as an observatory because we're just a group of interpreters? We could have used any other word, but this could be a scientific undertaking. But what we have in AIC is a statistical database, a small statistical database that is very useful because it gives us an idea of what the universe of work is in the world in which we live. But like companies, like business companies, or anyone who uses statistics knows, statistics and trends are based on a premise that what happened in the past will tend to reproduce and repeat itself in the future. And if we think we are having this debate about a future that is falling all over us as an unknown series of threats, and that we'll be able to somehow use our statistics to find our way out or forward, I think we would be kidding ourselves. On the basis of our statistics and statistical analysis, and if we are hoping to do relational studies to come up with tactics, we might hope that. But when we talk about the long course of the future, this isn't really about tactical measures, but rather what strategy will we use to survive in the universe in which we live. And what I'm left with is to have a somewhat more complex understanding of the world in which we live. We don't need a group of scientists in our association to see this. We can just have anyone that observes all of the information that appears on groups that are important to the future of this association and of our way of participating in society. We can say the same in regards to whether we are an association of conference interpreters or whether we're going to incorporate all modalities. That belongs to the universe of not only strategic decisions, but also policy. And we're all here because we assume a certain political role having to do with the vote that we have and those that we represent. And that's why we're here. And that political responsibility that is shared by all of us who are here and the young people that are here is not to manage the past. It's our political responsibility to look towards the 21st century that is underway and that will be very different from the glorious past that I can be proud to have belonged to, but will be very different from the future. We have to have the courage of our convictions, of our decisions, and not base it only on scientific studies, but on our gut and on our sense of what is needed today without fear. We can't be a professional association and to live on the margins of what is really happening in society. We'll cease to exist if that's what we do. Faced with the challenges that we have today, and there are many, my papers are a bit of a mess because of the comments and all of the things that we heard. We know that technology is going to represent, and technology has represented, an extraordinary change for us and for the rest of society. I don't know if you have an idea of the importance of exponential growth. It's almost unimaginable what exponential growth will mean for us. And those who know about this talk about the capacity of memory, of the processing speed, and what this means for the creation of algorithms that can be significant not only for our association, for our profession, but for many others as well, who see their own profession and the future of and their professional future threatened.
Many of us are wondering, and this question has been asked here, about whether our work, we ourselves, can be replaced by machines and by algorithms. There are machines on the market that already do this. They do this work, but it is not the same as what we do. Just like the advent of low-cost airlines, in the same way that their arrival did not mean the disappearance of ordinary conventional airlines, it did mean a change for tourism, for the tourism sector, and for the way society operates. The same can happen to interpretation. Our sector, which was very specific for politics and for the history of interpreting, is no longer the same. Our society goes further. We have political awareness. There are refugees, there are people in hospitals, and there has to be political will behind it that is going to feed into greater equality in our society. There is also a demand for equality amongst those in police departments on the island of Lesbos, for example. But clearly here, I know, how can we not know that these are not conference interpreters working here? But this is the environment of interpreting. This is going to grow exponentially. And similarly with new technologies that we are so afraid of, new technologies are going to mean the opening of an entire field. And at the moment, the change that this implies is totally incalculable for us. And this will require us to adapt for many, many reasons. Amongst other things in our work, the society that we will be working in will be very different. We saw this in Cartagena with Rob Davidson, where we had conferences with various different headquarters. So there were people in the room, but also people elsewhere in the world who were communicating through links and video link, and they were probably in different time zones. And what is going to happen to interpreters with this? Probably they will be working via a platform. They may all be in the same room, they may be separated. Or they may not be in any of the places that the signal is coming from. They may be in a different country, they may be in their own homes. And this whole universe, therefore, means that there will be different issues that we will have to contend with, and this will require new skills. They may not be linguistic skills that we need, rather technical skills. How are we going to operate these machines? How can we use machines to help us to do our work? We need to understand what is happening when we have to adapt. We can always say that we are an organization, we are an association of conference interpreters, and we want to continue being conference interpreters. Of course, we have this right. I believe that we have a great responsibility on our shoulders to our profession. And then there are other paralinguistic issues. This report that Klaus wrote, this very high quality report that he gave us on these multiple platforms, it doesn't just mean a technical change in what we do, it is a change in the entire environment of communication. Communication will no longer be face-to-face. We are entering the virtual environment where people are involved and participate in a different way. And actually, taking the floor is just a voice where there is sound, image, a presenter. And we do have a role in this new environment, but it is down to us to define it. Furthermore, there will also be a change in language. People will communicate in a different way. They may have to speak more briefly. Time will become more expensive. There will be more acronyms, perhaps more formulas. There will not be any eyes. There may not be any gestures, facial expressions, demeanor. Another of the skills that we will probably have to acquire is not just operating a machine. It is also how to handle the absence of our booth mates. The absence of our booth mates, absence of our teams, the absence of the people we are communicating with. There will be the problem of loneliness. Those of us who have come out of consecutive interpreting, if you forgive me, this was the universe of the public sphere, the sphere of power. It wasn't the interpreters who said, we don't want to interpret in booths because this is not going to be good. It was because we were moving from the public sphere to the private sphere of the booth. And there, the explanation of why one of the traumas in our history is going from consecutive to simultaneous, and when we became not perhaps an exclusive profession, but at least partly that. And this, our role as a bridge, we need to see how we will cross this bridge into the virtual sphere. We will be talking to people who are 12 hours away from us. But this is the world that we're going to. We can continue talking about our issues, and I will continue talking about it. I will be here. But we must start to look elsewhere and look further out on the horizon. Finally, the issue of the association in all of this and its place in all of this. AIC was born in 1953, and it is structured around a vision that has functioned for better or for worse, but a very original one and an atypical one. We are an association of individual members. We are not a federation of groups or a federation of countries. This was a rare creature at the time it was created. Today, this does make sense in a universe where technology has brought us these platforms. Those who have the advantage of technology and capital will also be the ones who are going to dominate demand. And this idea of the commodification of individual workers and the work that we do is also something that we are going to have to respond to. Our ability to negotiate with a number of organizers in Singapore, in Turkey, or in India will be pretty much null and void. We'll be able to say yes or no, but that will be our last say in the matter. Another question that relates to our association, which I think is a very serious issue, is that we are a professional association, but we are also have a role as a union, and it is our role as a union in these platforms are at the risk of crumbling. In this world of globalization, it is not just AIC and unions, it is also governments that are not able to get organized with the agreement of the market, because anybody can work with anybody else. And nobody knows. There's a lack of transparency. Nobody knows who works with whom or where the money went. On the question of our role as a union, I think this is very close to what happens in the supply chains. I think as the response that we can give as an association, it may not resound with, or it may not echo our response in our role as a union. It can be problematic to see what we saw in the United States with the competition that caused something of a crisis, and I think we will have to rethink this. But we won't be able to do any of this in a 3-hour session. But we can start thinking about it, and we can try and find the tools to start working on it and look forward with boldness, to be bold as we look to the future, as we have made a commitment to our reality and to the reality that will face those that come in the future. I think it is very important to think about intergenerational justice, not just as an association, but also to think about what profession we will leave behind to those that come afterwards. And so I would enjoin you to do this. And I hope that we will see one another again to work on this and to look to the future. Thank you.